why this is sitting here.
Holy Thanks, goodbye. Goodbye.
Oh, live in 5. Here we go. Hey, it hasn't burned out yet. There's a win.
Rest in peace to our the one video podcast that won't make the interwebs.
Oh, yeah. Which one died on that, by the way? Which one had the bad audio? What was it?
It wasn't the audio; it was the video.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah.
It had a fucky clip.
I figured that was a little bonus clip for our audio only listeners.
How come it had to be one of the ones I edited? That sucks.
Yeah.
Oh, sweet.
Colombe.
Sweet baby Jesus.
Bold and creamy. That is bold and creamy.
Yeah? It puts the bill, huh?
It's thick, dude.
Yeah.
It's palatable.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, you got that texture for your mouth there, buddy. I'm more of a give me the fuel.
Give me fuel, give me fire.
Give me that which I desire. Ooh. A little Metallica for you, folks. Ooh, fire's rolling. You're going to be able to put another piece in there in a second. Oh, yeah. What a crazy last week.
Are we going to break your streak here?
Yeah, apparently I can actually start a fire. I think I've come to the conclusion that maybe the pieces have been too big. My whole, though it's the chimney thing, is kind of looking void because I haven't cleaned it. Yep, no, we do. You can throw one or more two in there and probably just close it and we don't have to worry about it. Just chuck what you can in there. Give it a 1. Have it a whoo. Holla what? Holla who? All right, shut that sucker before we burn the house down. She's going hot. There you go. So what have you been up to, Timmy?
Josh Jones comes raining from Big Sky, Montana.
Oh, man. That was a fun time.
With a voice that's mostly back?
I bet you I'd say I'm about 80%. I tried. Well, we did that video with your sub giving the bow away, and I was like, you're going to have to avoid me talking as much as you can because my voice is gone. I talked a lot for 3 days straight. Awful lot of fans that wanted to say hi and had questions and things like that, which is great. I mean, that's why I would go to something like that.
It's for the people.
I'm not there to shoot. I mean, don't get me wrong, it was fun to shoot, but I'm not there for that. I'm there to shake hands and, hear your story and find out where you're from and what you do and how you shot that day and that kind of thing. I mean, that's why I'm there. That's the whole point. And the difference from last year to this year was pretty drastic as far as the amount of that. I wasn't quite used to it.
It makes the internet feel real. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, it fills the tank. I had a couple of people ask me what it was like one night. I was like, it fills my tank. It goes, hey, what you're doing is making a difference. What you're doing is helping people. Because every person that came up to me is like, I just want to say I love your channel. I really appreciate what you do because it really helped me a lot. And that's why I'm doing it. So it's just kind of neat to get that feedback. So much so that we were just talking before we turned this on. I was like, I dare go like 3 or 4 of these next year. Like, it was crazy. I mean, granted, it's expensive and you got costing a trip. And if you want to film it, then you're taking a cameraman with you, at least one, preferably 2, so you can have one guy shooting, talking, and another guy shooting the long stuff. And man, I mean, that's a lot. It's a lot of cost. But at the same time, I'd go. I have yet to film myself. I mean, I've gone with Dan twice when he was hiring camera people and that kind of stuff. So I didn't have to pay anything. But I honestly think I would go for sure and pay to go. I don't know if I'd pay for a cameraman or not. I might not even film it. Just go to talk to people because I've said this a lot. My YouTube for me is not for growth. As much as I need it to grow so it gets out to more people, my YouTube is to help you. And if I can show up and get reminded that I'm helping you a lot, then it makes all the effort, energy, time, work, effort really feel like it's not in vain. There are times that it's always you get overloaded. And I probably get it once a week. I'm just like, oh, I just want to go be a hermit in the mountains. It's crazy. But I can't make that impact otherwise. And I get reminded by it a lot. We had 2 people in the shop today, one from Canada and one from the southern Washington area that just, made the trip up, wanted to buy something and, wanted to have a picture taken and, talk to you for a little bit, get a tip or two. And that was, it's really neat. It's just not what I expected, It's weird. Feels weird.
Yeah. I always, you see the comments and you see the thumbs up, you see the analytics, but when you get to see the people in real life that are that are into it, it always makes it feel real to me. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
More than a number, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And you really get to see those people and connect with them. And everyone's always so respectful. And,
oh gosh. Yeah.
Yeah.
It was funny there. You'd get to, points where there was a lot of people and they'd just be like standing in a circle around you, kind of waiting their turn to say something.
Yeah.
Just sitting there really quiet and being nice. And there was one point where John Dudley, myself, and Dan were all like 10 feet apart, and there was equal amounts of people just standing around waiting their opportunity to talk to you, And I looked around when I was talking to somebody for a second, like, this just feels really weird. Like it felt kind of celebrity-ish, and I don't think of that at all when it comes to this. This is just our community, I don't see it that way, but it kind of felt like that for a minute, and it kind of creeped me out a little at first. Just because I don't want that. I don't feel that way. I don't think that way. I'm just a dude who likes to work on bows and wants people to get better at it. It's not any more complicated than that for me, But it was interesting. I did meet John, and I'm a little perturbed because somebody asked us to take a picture together, and then I didn't get a copy of the picture because John introduced himself and whatnot, but he was concerned that I was going to be taller than him in the picture because I was wearing a pair of hiking boots and he was wearing some Jordans or something like that. And I was about, somebody was standing behind. He goes, "Oh yeah, he's got you by about an inch." He seemed a little perturbed by that, but yeah, that was interesting to say the least. But yeah, just the feedback from the people was huge, and shooting with some random subscribers and whatnot was really neat. I mean, I've done it before, but it was just really cool, and it's nice to, every time I go shoot or whatnot, I'm always giving advice to people on what they need to do and how to better, deal with this environment or that environment or what you're doing. And it's neat to feel like you have that opportunity to make a difference for somebody and, help them with their game. And I really dig it, man. I wish, I kind of wish I could just do that to a degree, because I just want to help people. I really do. I just want people to get better. And it's like I said, it's just, I don't know, I'm a little misty about it, but it's neat to feel like you're doing that, to see that you're doing that, not feel like it, but really have it reinforced.
Yeah. And have you ever been to an event that's like, hey, these are more my people kind of thing? Like everyone's like-minded that's there. They're there because they love bow and arrows. Mm-hmm. They hunt hard or are into some type of hard work. It's like, it's a really good community of people. I mean, if you went and talked to 10 different people, you'd probably get along with all 10 of them, or at least 9, just like,
I would think that, what's there, like 2,000 people at that one? I bet you there's 5 people you wouldn't like out of the whole thing. Like every person was so cool. I mean, you'll get a couple that are a little enamored with the moment kind of thing. I remember when I went to Reading, there was a kid, I shouldn't say kid, but it was like probably in his 20s, that worked at a shop that came up to me to talk to me, and he couldn't talk. Like he was stammering through his words and whatnot. And I just tried to comfort him and whatnot. But that was interesting. And there were a couple where you could just tell they were like
super fans.
They freaked out and didn't know what to say.
Yeah,
which that just once again seems really weird to me. But at the same time, it's like, hey, that meant a lot to that person, and I was glad that I could give them that moment.
Yeah, all the people I've gotten to meet off the internet that I've maybe looked up to or admired have all been very legit in person. Like, I haven't met someone yet that's like, oh, that's a different internet persona than they are in real life.
Yeah.
And I think something to be said about that with social media is because if you're on social media often, you're not it's a funny way to say it, but you're exposing yourself all the time. Like,
yeah, it is.
you are, how are you gonna mask something when you're sharing a lot of your lifestyle? So there's not much to be masked.
Well, I guess it's possible to mask it if someone's doing it for you.
Yeah.
Like if you're paying someone to manage your social media and you're not posting it yourself, and someone else is, keeping the persona going or whatnot, I guess that's possible. But I mean, that's got to be a really small percentage of people in this industry, at least. I mean, that nobody's like mega rich, or if they are, they just participate in this industry, but they got something from somewhere else, and that, like Rogan or Jay Cutler was there. Like, I'm sure Jay Cutler doesn't do his own social media, if he even has one.
Was Rogan there?
No. But in general, like, I'm trying to think of people that have had success largely elsewhere and are in our industry. Like, I'm sure there's maybe 0.1% of the people in this have somebody managing it for them. Maybe, I don't know.
Most people I've met just do it on their own. Maybe I don't know. Yeah. First time I got to really experience that, I think, was probably at Big Sky 3 years ago. I just talked to Jocko for like 5 minutes, and that's what's kind of cool about that event is everyone's in an environment where they're approachable, and it's not like there's hordes of people you can't talk to or whatever. I mean, it's a very approachable environment, and most people that are there are going to be like mingling, like hanging out. There's like one spot to hang out, so everyone goes there.
Yeah, there's like a general meandering place.
And I got to hang out with him for a couple minutes, get a couple minutes of his time, and he was genuine and very, very much like you'd expect him to be, and it was cool.
Yeah, he was there. I talked to him for a little bit.
Did you arm wrestle him?
No, he definitely went.
Yeah,
he's actually up by my property this week. They're doing that echelon front thing again this week. So, but I can't get up there till it's over, so I won't get to see him again.
No,
but I'm going to go hang out with my buddy Jason Friday night and ask him how it went. He's one of the main operators of that echelon front deal that they do.
A little retreat or something like that.
Yeah, it's a leadership thing. It's like people that own companies or run companies typically are who participates, and it's all leadership skills and traits, and they do team bonding, that kind of stuff, and it's all taught by former SEALs, and they were all like team leaders, that kind of stuff. And Gardner was in the SEALs for like 30 years. He's been on Jocko's podcast several times, but he just, ironically, the property that I bought, he's a mile away from me, and his wife wanted to learn how to shoot bows off a horse. And so he looked up some archery stuff, and then my neighbor was friends with them and said, well, hey, the guy who owns the property right above me owns a shop in Spokane, and came down and introduced himself, and we became buddies real quick. He's a good dude, really good dude.
I imagine,
yeah, most of those guys that manage to keep their head on relatively straight throughout what they've done and protecting us and serving us are just amazing people. I have so much respect for servicemen. I really do.
Yeah. It's incredible and incredibly selfless to really, to do that. Yeah.
So, you want some stories from TAC, or what?
Yeah,
what do you think?
I would like to hear some of the stuff that people don't get to hear or see. Some of the stuff that you wouldn't expect if you had never been to the event, kind of thing.
Only one person got to see Bob Lagassa's fruit basket. Jeez. Bob Lagassa is a full-on legend. He might be the funniest man I've ever met, but he's always pulling pranks and got a joke and whatnot. But fun
fact about Bob: he tried to pants me at the last one.
I know. I went to.
Did you remember that?
Oh, dude, I recorded it.
You recorded that?
I recorded that.
Wow.
I helped coordinate that. Bob said he was going to try, and like, well, hold on a second.
Yeah.
We need to get this if this is going to go down. So, and it took like about 5-6 minutes for somebody to not be standing in the way.
Thank God
so I could catch it on record.
Yeah.
You hung on to that so tight.
Yeah.
Your butt cheeks just went. So tried and failed. I think it came down a little bit, but you caught it real fast.
That's Bob's intro. As Bob tried to pants me 2 years ago
in the middle of a bar at like midnight.
Well, I was talking to
in
the
busiest place.
middle of
bridesmaids.
Bridesmaids party.
Yeah, of course you were.
Yeah.
That's where I would find Tim Connor, right in the middle of the bridesmaids.
So there I was.
So who's having a little too much fun?
There I was, and thankfully my biscuits didn't get exposed.
Hung on tight, yeah. Let's see.
But yeah, so Bob Lagassa's
legend,
legend,
just a flat legend, man.
Yeah.
posted his video or reposted his video of him doing the bugling in the Borat suit on my socials the other day. God, that guy is so hilarious. Anyway, yeah, so no moment was free or safe in the house by any means because Bob was going to try to mess with somebody. We got him back, though. That was fun. But he may or may not have had some inappropriate pictures on his phone because he left it unlocked.
Oh, no.
Left it unlocked by his bed when he was charged. I'm like, Bob. Yeah, Bob. Rookie move, Bob. But, yeah, going up to the mountain, they drove us up early so we could hopefully not block a bunch of people trying to shoot by filming. Still got caught by, like, target 16. But, yeah, and we get off and get started, and one of the two subs was a minister, and I was like, oh, no. I don't know how to not say fuck. It's like, he's like, oh, it's okay. Don't worry about it. It'll be all right.
Yeah.
But fortunately, to most religious guys, usually the GD is the one you never say. You never take thy Lord's name in vain over any of the other stuff. And somebody else dropped that one really loud. I'm not going to say who, but he might have been short and had a really bad day shooting that day. So I felt like I was off the hook when somebody else let out the GD really loud. It went, oh, God, no.
Yeah.
It's so funny. But really cool dude, really hard worker. Most of them, I mean, the subs did an awesome job. The other poor guy, we were chatting away on like target 7, just nonstop, just chatting, right? And he got distracted and wasn't paying attention, forgot to put an arrow in his bow.
Saw that,
and
yeah.
Boom. Was okay. Nothing bent.
And that was a Matthews, right?
No, that was a Hoyt.
It was a Hoyt.
That was a Hoyt.
Okay.
And yeah, his cams didn't bend. Everything held together okay. Nothing derailed. That worked out. Fortunate for him. But yeah, there were some long shots that day. The weather was good, though, and it didn't start raining until the afternoon. So we actually got out of the first group there before then, but it took like 6 hours to shoot 25 targets. I'm like, oh, my God, why does this take so long? And you forget you're each person shooting one arrow and everything's got to line up right. And it's good that they sent us out there 2 hours before anybody else because we would have just destroyed the freaking flow of people. But yeah, I mean, just good times. Keith rolled his ankle, like really bad, like about halfway through, and Keith's tough. Like he was a hard ass. And so he kind of limped his way down to the water station because we were really close to it and just tried to say it was fine, sat down, cinched up his boot, and I made him give me his backpack. He was trying to refuse. I'm like, no. You're not carrying this. We need you to function tomorrow. I'm sure you can hard ass your way through today. That's fine. But we need you to be able to walk tomorrow. So this is going to be a problem. So I took his bag, and he ended up being okay, fortunately. He said by the next day, he's like, I couldn't even tell I did anything wrong, but it was pretty ginger the rest of the day. But let's see.
So how many arrows bit the dust on day 1?
I didn't count.
For the group?
For the group, I would say probably at least 10. There's probably at least 10 or...
Rest in peace, 10 carbon arrows?
Yeah, there was at least 10.
I would have guessed a little more even.
No, I bet you it was around 10.
Yeah. 4 guys, 25 targets?
I didn't count.
Yeah.
Well, let's see. Hold on. There was 6. No, 5. Because Bob shot, I shot, Dan shot, and the 2 subs. So there's 5 people shooting in our group. If I'm right, or was there a 6th? No, there's 5.
And Bynum shot?
Oh, Bynum, 6, yeah. So we had 6. So that's 6 guys shooting 25 targets. That's 150 arrows flung. I'd say a 10 is probably about right. It was somewhere around there. I brought all my arrows back fine, fortunately.
On day 1?
Day 2, both.
No. You missed a target, you said.
Yeah, but I got it.
Oh, yeah.
And that was the last. So that was the last target. That was the last target on day 1, and I pulled a rookie move, pulled my bow back and anchored in, and everything was good. At this point, we're 5.5 hours in, somewhere around there, and I'm sucking wind pretty hard because it's so high, and I'm not adjusted to the elevation.
I think the peak is like 10K, right?
It's 12.
12, yeah.
Yeah, the peak's 12, and you start at like 11 most of the time, working your way down to, I think, 8 or 9, somewhere around there at the bottom. And I'm on the last target, and I pull back, and it's like 100-yard sheep. And I anchor in, get into my click, and start pulling, and like I'm sitting there looking at it, and all of a sudden I see like 3 pins instead of 1. I'm like, okay, I need to let this down. I'm losing my oxygen. And I pull my hand away from my face to let it down. The release goes.
Patong.
Yeah, so that was my miss.
Yeah.
And I reshot it and shot in the vitals. So, I mean, I still feel like I did everything good and right, but I technically had a 0 because of that. But arrow was stuck right in a branch or something, just right where the direction it went. And
salvageable.
it was still fine. Yeah, nothing wrong with it. I kept shooting that arrow the next day. And then the next day I didn't lose any, but I think we ended up skipping a couple of targets because it was getting really log jammed. And we were trying to get back down to the vendor village before it closed so we could still talk to people and whatnot. So I think we ended up skipping like 5 or 6 targets just to pass this group because we were trying to shoot a lot faster on day 2. We weren't filming anything long. We were just like filming the guy shooting kind of thing. And so it was like 2 or 3 of us shooting at a time instead of 1, so you could catch up and move through it pretty good. But that was a good time. I enjoyed that. A lot of long walking on that day. Second day we came to, I think about a third of the way through, and a dude with an RX-7 had derailed his bow, and he had a porta press with a limb kit in his backpack, and he had it laying out there trying to do it himself. And Dan found him first, and then hollered at me to come over, and I looked at it and like looked at what he got, and I'm like, I think we can make this work. So I backed his limb bolts out as far as I could do it, and as far as I could take them down, and slid all the stuff up, and managed to actually put his bow back together on the mountain.
Oh wow!
Yeah, we probably took about 20 minutes, but got it put back together, checked out his servings, and pointed out something to look at, but it was probably fine, and made sure his cams were straight, and went, "Yeah, you're good." And then he like took a tumble, I guess like 7 or 8 targets later, and messed up his sight. So he still didn't get to finish, but his bow worked fine.
Poor guy.
After that, but I was like, back in my head, I'm like, I just threw this dude's bow back together in the middle of nowhere with
pretty awesome.
Like 20 minutes.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was pretty funny. I think
those days are physical. They're not heavy physical, but there's something, like
just trying to operate in that environment when you're not used to it's brutal.
Yeah, it's something.
It's not hard walking. It's not hard hiking. I mean, your feet are going to hurt a little bit because of the hills and angles and sliding and whatnot. And that second day, it had rained a lot. So there was a lot of slip and slide if you weren't careful. Mm-hmm. So it's pretty easy to hurt yourself, but it's just the oxygen.
Do you remember how much so you went over with a granulated tape? Maybe
I went over with a computer program.
That's
so
right.
I could change it.
Is granulated not the right term?
Equal? Yeah, I think it is granulated.
Yeah, with the granulated tape.
Yeah.
And do you remember 20 and 80? Is that where you started?
Oh, when I decided it in here, I did it at 2080.
Okay.
Yeah.
So how much did your 80 mark change on that? Do you remember?
I figured, so when I went out to, I just moved out to 100 yards and set it at 100 and shot and saw how far off I was and then monkeyed with it a little bit. I think I was about 2 to 3 yards hot at 100. So I was
which equals how many inches?
A good solid 2 yards hot at 80. Inch-wise, it had to be probably 3 inches, something like that.
3 inches at 80?
I think so, somewhere around there. I just was manipulating the numbers until I was hitting in the middle again. Mm-hmm. I know Dan was shooting like a 420, 430 grain arrow, and I was shooting like 360.
Yeah, you're shooting super light and fast.
I deliberately shot. I went, what's the lightest thing I could ever hunt like an antelope with and feel good about it? I'm like, okay, I'll use that. So I'm like, this is still a hunting arrow for that. Mm-hmm. And so the faster you are, the lighter it is, the less gravity is going to take an effect on it, right? So you change that environment. I mean, the farther you get from the core of the earth, the lighter gravity gets, right? Which is why eventually you'll float away. You get far enough out. But the lighter the arrow, the less gravity will take a play on it. So Dan had to change like 6 yards or something. Like his 94 became 100, that kind of thing. It was something like 5 or 6 by the time he was all said and done. So, and that was what, 60 grains difference in arrow weight, was it? But he's also
a little less energy,
shorter draw length, but he was shooting more weight too. I mean, so I was like a 75-pound bow, and I think I was shooting like 68 or 70. But 30 inches versus 27 inches.
And there's no real way to avoid that or negate that. You either have to resight when you get there, or you just have to know roughly what your cuts is. And so the thing with cuts is
there is an easier way.
I know you can back your limb bolts out.
Out.
We talked about this.
Yeah.
So we should probably talk about it on the podcast. But the other thing is, if you know the percentage change isn't going to change. Mm-hmm. So say it's 10% difference. That would be 10 yards at 100 yards and 5 yards at 50. And that's how we would do it in golf. At 5,000 feet, it's roughly 10%. depending on the air density, and then you just take that 10% number, which 10% of a driver might be 30 extra yards, but 10% of a sand wedge might be only 10 yards. So if you know the percent change, that could be a firm and fast way to run your numbers. But even still, it doesn't feel that good guessing.
No.
You know what I mean?
No, that's never a feeling anybody wants to enjoy, which,
Yeah, you don't want to be guessing when your pin's floating on a 100-yard goat. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah, and in that environment, if you don't know what it is or you can't just change it with a computer program or whatnot, the easiest solution is to walk out to 100 yards, set your sight to 100 yards or 80, however far you're comfortable shooting at distance, and shoot at the dot and slowly lower your limb bolts down in weight until you hit the dot again.
Yep.
And then voila, you're good to go. And then when you leave, just crank it back to where you were from home, and you're back to where you were.
And that always works if we're going from Spokane to Big Sky. But if someone's coming from Big Sky to Spokane,
hope you got some limb bolt travel to crank it up, get a little velocity. You're going to need it. Yeah, It's always from low elevation to high elevation. You can back it down, but yep.
It's interesting. You want to give a couple best practices for like 3D setups if a person, because that's becoming more and more popular where people are setting rigs up for specific stuff. So if someone's going to an event and they want to have an MFJJ more forgiving kind of setup, give a couple of best practices.
Well, if you're going to shoot anything that's like tournament archery related or for score, or you're going to possibly run the risk of having to resight everything when you get to where you're going because there's a big elevation change, I can't recommend a target sight enough, because you can use anything with a granulated sight tape allows you to use a computer-generated program where you can punch different buttons in and change what it is. That's an easy solution. Excel makes one. Excel makes several. CBE makes them. Sherlock makes them. Shibuya. There's just a whole bunch. I'm probably missing like 4. But there's a whole bunch of them out there, and it's pretty easy to do. And if you're going to build something for the purpose of shooting target, whether it's 3D target or dots or bales or what have you, target sights are that way for a reason. They're just far superior for shooting at different elevations and different pressures and changes. That's huge. Being able to add a lens at some point, which I didn't shoot for that. I did shoot a target sight because I wanted to be able to make changes to it, but I could also still hunt with that. And I just shot a 10 thousandths 31 millimeter housing, just like a regular single pin sight. Wasn't anything beyond that. But to be able to add magnification is helpful when you start stretching out distance or when you can't really see the rings on a target. But if you blew it up a little bit, you could. That's always nice.
For arrows, you want to be as light as possible?
Well, it depends.
Yeah.
If you're shooting known distance, which almost anything is anymore, speed's not really a factor. The only way that speed's really going to help you on shooting something light to gain the speed is, one, if you're in a higher elevation, lower elevation, your arrow's less, so it has less of an effect on the change because your arrow weighs less. 1. 2, lighter will help you in shooting through windows and things like that, i.e., you've got this much drop versus this much drop, right? You need to have greater clearance of branches and things like that would be in your way, the slower your bow is, right? So there was a good example. There was a tree going across at an angle that was kind of at the right height where it was going to be really close to hitting it to still hit the target. And actually, Dan squared it, like nailed it perfect right in the middle of the branch. And I cleared it easy, but I was shooting quite a bit faster. So my trajectory was flatter, so I didn't need as much room. But that can also hurt you. Like if there's something in the way specifically and you're trying to lob over it, the faster you are, the harder that's going to be to clear. So it doesn't always help. People get really fixated on speed as this major benefactor. It's really not. If you know how far away things are. If you don't know how far away things are, speed's huge. Because if you screw up the yardage guessing it, you're more likely to hit the dot. And that's a huge plus. But in known target, it doesn't really matter that much. What you want to shoot is something that's really accurate with a lot of FOC. So when the wind gets blowing, it doesn't move by as much. And then also in that scenario, you want to use about the smallest vanes possible or fletchings. Because the more vane or fletch you have, the more the wind's going to catch it when it is windy. So if it'll pull the back end of the arrow and drag it away from the target.
I hear that, dude.
Because you're only using like a big vane to stabilize a broadhead. If it's a target, you're not stabilizing jack. I mean, if you tune the bow right, you don't even need fletchings on that thing.
And I've watched so many arrows fly in slow-mo that I've seen big vanes just get kicked by the wind or, Yeah. They get hit. They get impacted more.
Trying to find that optimum lower profile yet still broadhead stable vein is something that eludes and haunts me every year. It's like there's got to be something that isn't going to move quite as much when it's windy, but still do a good job of stabilizing my broadhead. It's real tricky trying to find that. I get a lot of questions about that too. It's like, what's the smallest thing I can still stabilize a fixed blade broadhead with? Because it does. If you've ever shot in the wind, it is crazy how much that drags. It's nuts. And that DCA vein is supposed to do a really good job of that, cutting wind. So I haven't shot it in the wind yet, but I have shot it in other situations. I've been very happy with it. So hopefully it'll cut wind like it says it does. But I got to wait for a good windy day and shoot side, see how much one moves over the other. That's a YouTube video. We'll see what happens there.
Yeah, now traditionally at these things, years past, we always kept score, right?
Yeah.
And I always felt like my lesson learned was we shouldn't keep score for all the targets. Because one, and that's mainly from a filming perspective, like trying to film all 25 targets and keep score, just slows people down. Like everyone's trying to shoot their best. I always felt like the best balance would be maybe shoot half the course for fun, half the course for score. What route did you guys go this year?
Well, we never really talked about what we were going to do, right, when we showed up. So
Man without a plan?
I was like, are we keeping score? And he's like, well, I'm keeping my score. I said, okay. So I just kept score for, me and Dan. But then on the second day, we didn't keep score at all.
Yeah, more of a for fun deal.
Yeah, and honestly, that really is the way it should be. Granted, obviously the fanboys and whatnot are going to want to know and that kind of deal. So yes, I beat Dan. Okay, we can just leave it at that.
Yeah.
But that's it's way funner to just enjoy it. The day 2, I didn't keep track at all, and just had fun shooting, and just trying to hit the middle. And honestly, where those rings aren't where I want to aim most of the time anyway. And when you start putting score in it, now you're mentally trying to make me point somewhere else than my brain wants to point, being a vital hunter. So honestly, for everyone's benefit, I wouldn't keep score if I were you.
Yeah.
Like practice on it like you're hunting, because where you would shoot that animal, like if that target's turned at a different angle, you don't want to shoot where that dot is. And you can pretend all you want that that's not going to affect you when it comes around to hunting. I have caught myself so many times pointing in the wrong spot when it comes time to hunting from 3D crap that I had done prior.
Interesting.
Where it kind of forced me, well, that's where the dot is. That's where I need to do. And then you find yourself pointing too far forward on a quartering target because you're used to trying to point at that dot. Or they position the target back, leaning at an angle or something, and the dot's like way higher. It just screws you up. You got to focus on where the dot is in the middle of the target, not on the outside of the target like they draw it. And that's tricky to do. I really wish there was a lot more just for fun 3D tournaments. And I'd love it if they didn't have rings on them at all. Like take the ring off. No score. Period. Which, maybe I'm ignorant, maybe I'm foolish, I don't know. But I would much rather see formats where your average hunting people are going to practice for hunting. And that's promoted and encouraged.
What's a pretty good score is how much carbon did you start with? How much carbon did you leave with?
I think that's a good way to put it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I left with everything that I started with.
Yeah, but you missed a target. And that's 50 targets over 2 days.
Mm-hmm.
And you're really good. So give your average archer out there, and, they're going to lose a few. They're going to lose a few, depending on which course you shoot and stuff. And
sure, yeah. And we shot the 2 hardest courses.
Did you?
Yeah, we shot Prime and Sitka.
Prime and Sitka. And what was the other one? RMEF.
Dan went back out and shot RMEF the first day and shot either Black Rifle or Leupold in the morning the second day. I wanted to spend more time in the village. I wanted to talk to people.
Yeah, that's how I always felt when I was there,
So
too.
I was like, no, I'm going to spend at least half the day hovering around here. And then the first day, the second half of the day, it was a downpour. So I ended up there's the Scissor Bills, the bar over the vendor village, if you look out the windows. So I think I hid in a couple of booths for an hour, and then when it became apparent that the weather wasn't letting up, a couple of us went up and ordered some food and just had a beer or whatnot, waiting for the rain to break. And it never really did. It slowed down and then sped up and slowed down all the way up until the village closed. So the second half of the first day that we were there, I didn't really get hardly
Well, you're
talk to
talking
anybody.
about true mountain weather, dude, right? Like 12,000 feet. I mean, that could be the origination of a freaking lightning storm.
Yeah, and that and that app does not work at all when you get up there of what weather's going to do.
Yeah.
Like we based when we were going to shoot the second day, the main course off of what the weather said it was going to do. The weather was supposed to just be freaking brutal in the morning and nice at 1:00, and it was the opposite. Like I think half of the course or whatnot we were shooting in, it wasn't quite as good, but the morning was beautiful.
Yeah,
I would have rather shot in the morning, so I had the whole afternoon to interact with people.
So let's talk about some gear that was good, gear that you'd consider swapping out. Because you went with a new release, you went.
Yep.
I don't know. I mean, you're always swapping out gear. So what was good?
You
what
want to talk
what
about
could
the
be
rest,
different?
don't you?
Well, we got to talk about the release a little bit.
The rest.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, the rest. Well,
Yeah.
we'll talk about the release too, because you shot the clicker for the first time.
I shot the Onyx
for
click
50 targets.
And the one thing that it bit me on was that letdown, and it bit me on that letdown because I had to pull the thumb button into the click, and my brain didn't think to let off of it when I pulled it away from my face, right? And as I pulled it away from my face to let down, it squeezed a little bit and went off. So I guess if I had to gripe, that's one, but that's my own fault. I know better than that. I just hadn't been used to it.
There could be a little learning curve there. I mean, I shot around to Vegas with that because I wanted to get reps with it.
Yeah.
And so Vegas is 30 arrows, right?
Yep.
Say that right? 30 arrows. And I had some really awesome shots. And I also had a couple shots where I just went to settle my thumb and I just went click bang. Because it was, and to be fair, these are my first 30 arrows. I hadn't set the release up for me.
Yeah.
But really nice when it worked, but I kind of had to dial it in. There's definitely, I would say, a little learning curve.
For sure. I had played with it for 2 weeks
Yeah.
before then, and I'd shot it several different times, mostly just at like close range, like 5 yards or whatnot, and trying to adjust it to where it felt comfortable to me, to where it was my ideal. And I have no complaints. Like I said, that misfire was my fault. That was not the release's fault. It worked flawlessly. I'm really happy with it. I think it's going to help a lot of people.
Did you customize the thumb peg at all?
I used their thumb peg, but I used the bigger one with the longer extension, and it fit my hand pretty good at that point.
XL size for you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
No. I have a large.
Large?
I have a large. My fingers are actually pretty skinny for how big my hand is, so it fits in the grooves pretty good. Plus, that's what they sent me when Joel came by. They sent me one with him. So that was what I had to work with anyway, and I got XLs 4 days before we were going to TAC.
Yeah.
I wasn't going to change the release.
I shot an XL in the shop, fit my hand pretty damn well.
Yeah. No,
Yeah.
it's...
There's not a big size gap between large and XL.
And I've received so many orders for mediums. It's crazy, and I'm worried a lot of them are going to come back. Because if you're used to like a true ball, for example, the sizing's not the same. Like a medium in a true ball is like a large in a stand.
That's fact.
Yes, a small in a true ball is like a medium in a stand. Like they're more medium, large, extra large versus small, medium, large. So I'm a little concerned that I'm going to get a whole bunch of returns where it's like, hey, this doesn't fit my hand. I need a large. Because we've sold not quite equal amounts of medium and large, but damn close. And that medium is not big. It's small.
I think you want equal amounts of large and extra large,
well,
probably.
That's what I thought, and I ordered more extra large than I did medium, and I've filled almost every extra large order. I think there's only 2 off that first shipment that haven't shipped, but there's a pile of mediums. Now I've got more coming, so it'll be fine. But it's just after the first initial wave, I was like, holy crap, this is way not what I thought, and I'm willing to bet I'm going to get 25% of them back because they're too small for their hand.
Well, I forgot about your little rest deal. I mean, we talked about it yesterday, but can you mix me up like a little beat real quick? So we can go to in today's episode of Rants with Josh. Rants with Josh. Josh.
Well, so we talked after
Cue up the
Reading,
rant.
right? We talked after Reading on here on what went wrong, right? And I was using an Epsilon with a universal mount. And if you know what the universal mount is, it's a plate. The mount's on the side of your bow, comes around the back, and then there's another piece that screws into it. And there's 3 little indent holes above and 3 little indent holes below. And the piece has 2 little pieces of metal sticking out of it that indicate where it goes from left to right. So you can move the rest windage, because they didn't make a ton of left to right windage in that rest, to try to keep it lighter, to where you could functionally move it more left or move it more right. First of all, every bow I've ever put one of those on, I've never needed to move it. It's always been in the middle. So I'm not sure if that left to right adjustment is truly relevant or not. However, it's there. Well, in Redding, my rest fell apart because the screws that hold that in weren't snug enough. I thought I'd snugged them up. I may have forgot to snug them up. They may have came loose. I don't remember exactly. But in order to get at, you had to unbolt the rest off your bow completely. Like take it all the way off, disassemble it, screw it back together, put it back on, bolt everything back on. And good luck being pointed in the same spot after that. Well, this time on day 2, I had my bow on a bipod. I was sitting behind a mule deer target that we just shot at like 80 yards. And if you ever like see me shooting, I'm almost always pulling everybody's arrows. I don't know why. I've just always done it. I've always been able to get arrows out of a target pretty good. And most everybody complains about having to do it, so I just do it. I just like, I got it. No worries. Somebody else score them, and I'll pull them out. Right? Just trying to, help. Be my what's the word? People pleaser. I think that's probably a decent definition of my personality. Well, in any event, I go to pull the arrows out, and somebody comes up and grabs the target to hold it, and they knocked the antlers off. If you ever seen like the Reinhardt's mule deer, they just sit on there. They're not like shoved in the head. It falls off really easy, right? Well, he grabs it, they fall off, lands on my bow, knocks my bow over, big old rock, perfectly in the right spot to hit the arrow rest on the cage side when it dumps over, and then my sight goes in the dirt. So that's 2 tournaments in a row that I've shot at that somebody knocked my bow over in the middle of the tournament. In any event, whatever, pick it up, walk down, go to the next target, and it's my turn to shoot, and I go to pull the bow back, and I look down, and my arrow rest is cockeyed. Like, oh shit, set it down, look at it. And those 2 little pieces that sit in there that hold that in place, it snapped off one of them. So then you could actually functionally pivot the rest, right?
Because you need both of them so it sits flush.
It's so it indexes, and then there's 2 screws under there that are in a slot, right? So if those indexes weren't there, you could kind of shimmy the rest a little bit. And that's pretty much what happened. It hit it so hard, and all the weight of the bow came down on that rock that it broke the little, I'll call it a tit that sits out there, snapped it off, and pushed the rest one direction, right? So I get up there, I look at it, set it down, and fortunately those things are relatively square, so I just shoved my rest back over. It was hard. It was really tight. Like the screws were snug. It was hard to move, but I moved it back over to where it looked like it was square. Like looked at it like 3 times, pushed it again, looked at it again, pushed it again. Well, that looks pretty square, and I looked at it, it looks kind of square, and just turned around the group, said, hey, watch where this goes. 70-yard turkey. And hooked on, drew back, lined her up, and hit a little high left. I'm like, okay, I won't lose arrows, probably. Let's go finish the tournament. Shot the rest of the course like that and hit high left on everything I shot at the rest of the day. Tried to compensate a little bit for it because I knew it was happening, but still shot high left on every target I shot at. Really consistently, too, which was cool. Came back here, unloaded my bow, and then we had the sub on Monday that you put your bow together for. So and he wanted me to shoot, so I went and grabbed my bow. Actually, let's back up here. Started their little competition thing that he made, and nobody was hitting a balloon. I'm like, this is dumb. I'm going to get my bow. You guys are screwed. And come back, and Tim had already shot a balloon by the time I got back. I'm like, all right, you got it done. But the sub had asked a couple of times if he could see me shoot. And so I shot a quiver full of arrows at, 85 or whatever that was on that target. And then brought the bow back in, set it down. It was still a little high left. And then, let's see, yesterday we decided to do a video and put a new heart in the moose, little reparo, and just make a video about it, just because so many people have seen that moose over the years of shooting long bombs at it.
Taking a lot of arrows, that old moose.
It's taking a lot of arrows. So, gave the moose a new core. His brother hasn't arrived yet, but he should be here soon. And just stepped back and shot it, 80, 90 or whatever, and just see who could hit the middle first. And I hit the 11 on the first shot. I mean, I couldn't have been more than that far out. And then we're like, well, we can't just do that. We got to shoot this thing again. So how about the second winner is whoever scores the most points out of 4 arrows, because I only had 4 arrows in my quiver. Go back, pull the arrows, come back, set the bow down, pick it up, and shot 3 out of 4 arrows in like a silver dollar probably, my group.
Yep.
Like a foot out of the middle almost, high and right. And Timmy got me, and then I moved my sight to try to compensate for where it was hitting. And
so because your first arrow hit true, do we think it got bumped after that?
I guarantee you when you set it down, it got shifted. But what was causing it and why it was going high right is the cord pulling on it would push the rest that way. So after we got done, and I came back inside, I did a little slow-mo for Instagram and shot it once, and the whole rest lifted up. Like I shot it at 5 feet or 10 feet or whatever, right? No kind of distance, and fired it once, and the rest went from like this to this. The pressure of the cord being pulled from this side lifted the whole thing up, and it finally loosened up enough that it had moved. And the high right positioning impact would be from the cord pulling on it, because if you can't keep that rigid, it's going to go like that. And ironically, after Reading, I called Hamsky and was like, hey, I want to buy 100 rests from you that are built the way I want them, not the way you're building them. So will you sell them to me without the mounting plate and the bracket? And I'd rather have the spring dampener instead of the rebound dampening setup that's on there, because I personally think that's a better system with a little loop and pull and an O-ring. Like that really good, worked great for me. Will you sell it to me that way? And they said, yeah, sure, we'll work you up a price. Never got back to me on the price. And I did that because it really alarmed me how easily that came loose. I didn't like it. It bothered me. And I really like the product and how it functions with the exception of that. And I really want to be able to keep endorsing and encouraging the use of that product. But in my own personal usage, I can't feel comfortable with that. So I like the product so much, I'm willing to go down to a machinist and have them remake me parts and rebuild it to where I feel good about it. And I'm hoping that they're going to get back to me and give me a price on it, because I'm going to do it whether they give me a deal on them or not. Because I really like that rest, but I want the bracket to be correct. I want it to have a little wider slot so you can make sure you can get 2 screws in it on a riser that actually takes 2 screws, and then a couple extra set screw holes. Because sometimes you'll go to try to put that secondary set screw in there to mount it up and lock it to where it won't rotate, and it's over another hole or something like that. You can't get that to have contact really good. Mm-hmm. So if I go through and drill 6 different spots that are threaded and tapped for a set screw, there's going to be somewhere where you're touching riser. So if you can only put 1 bolt in it, i.e. Matthews only has 1 bolt in it, PSEs only have 1 bolt in it, the Carbon Bowtech only has 1 bolt in it, I think. A lot of the aluminum Bowtechs have 2 in them. But several of the bows only have 1 hole. And when you're trying to tighten up a rest, if it doesn't directly push right against the back of the riser, it can rotate when you're pulling on it.
Totally. Yeah.
Right? So those set screws are kind of important. And it's frequent on a lot of those ones that have that set screw, that when you line up the first bolt to where the launcher just doesn't touch the riser as it comes down, that other set screw is right over another hole, and the holes are too wide to actually put 2 through the launcher. So just trying to solve a problem with it that bothers me. Like I said, the rest works really well when it's set up correctly. It's pretty much foolproof, but that little piece just, it's not going to hold up. I'm worried about it. So I'm trying to find a functional solution myself so I can still feel really good about that. If you're using the Matthews one that's bolted on a Matthews, it's flawless. It's 1 piece of metal, locks into the back of the riser, no way for it to rotate, no need for any set screws or anything like that. The plate that goes into the rest is all made out of the same piece of aluminum. It's a really good way to do it, and I don't think you need that left to right adjustment underneath there. I haven't found a bow that I needed it on yet that I didn't easily have 13/16 off the riser, because I really think what that's for is so many places don't know how to tune a bow correctly.
They just move the shit
that
out of the
they're
riser.
moving the shit out of the rest, and they need that extra movement, right? Where I don't need that. Mm-hmm. So whether they give me a deal on them or not, at this point, I don't even care. I'll buy the spring assembly and take the rebound dampening kit off and sell it separately, because people want those and buy those anyhow. But yeah, that I've been to 2 tournaments that year, and it malfunctioned on me at both. So I'm not really jacked about it personally. I'm a little perturbed, and I called and expressed my concern, and their solution was like, well, we can put some Loctite in the package for you. I was like, no, you understand, it broke off. It wasn't just Loctite. It's not just the screws.
Super glue it or duct tape? Or?
No, it's like, come on.
Josh, I can set you roll of duct tape with
And they talked about redoing those little pieces that stick out and making them bigger.
Yeah.
I'm like, well, why don't you just make it out of 1 piece of metal?
Why don't you just listen?
Well,
yeah.
But they're really smart over there,
I know.
And when you're talking to an engineer or something like that, most companies aren't super receptive to pointing out a flaw in something they designed or that you feel is a flaw. So some will be really receptive, and they got their ears open. They're super excited. It was funny. My sales rep, because I talked to him, he was there and showed it to him. And then I sent him a picture last night of it cockeyed in my rest. And then I sent him a little video of, check this out. Still think that works okay? And his reply back to me is like, so how were they receptive? And I said, yeah, it kind of seemed like he didn't think it was a big deal. And his reply was, oh, so typical engineer's response. Yeah, and engineers just take that shit sensitively. But
well,
that's 2 times, and I didn't even have a lot of arrows through them.
It's an interesting blend where I grew up a lot next to a really good engineering school, so I had a lot of friends that went to school to be engineers, and there's I've met kind of 2 classes of engineers, and they're all really smart. But you have a really good engineer that can design stuff on paper and in a lab really good. And then you have engineers that design stuff that's on paper in a lab really good and also practical and listen to customer feedback.
Yeah.
And there's, in the Venn diagram, there's room in the middle, right? It doesn't have to be one or the other.
Yeah.
It can be.
You get in that little spot in the center and you're the king.
Yeah.
You're the bee's knees.
Yeah. But.
Yeah, some of them are just really sensitive. And honestly, we were talking about this the other day, and I'm like, I don't even think I should say anything. And then I went, wait a minute. I've built my whole premise on I'm going to be honest.
Yeah.
And I'm probably, I don't know if I'm the number one ham ski dealer in the nation, but I'm easily in the top 5. And I've done it twice now because the video we made, I talked about it too. I'm speaking out against the product. I was like, this is wrong. This is not an acceptable answer, and you need to fix it. So we'll see what happens, and hopefully I don't get cut off from selling their product or something or other for being blatantly honest. But, tell me I'm wrong. I know it happened to me, and if it happened to me, it happened to somebody else. Has to have. There's no way I'm the only unfortunate soul that happened to.
So if we're just distilling it down for dummies, it's it's less durable than others they've made in the past because of the universal mounting bracket on a harsh impact.
Yeah, so the Epsilon is the skinniest, lightest thing they've ever made.
Yeah.
They've never made anything that small. Hamski was overbuilt like Spot Hog's overbuilt. It was way heavy. And I really like the fact that they did whatever they could to lighten it up. And like I said, in the instance of the Matthews rear bracket, it works great because there's no extra parts and pieces, and it literally is it's the gap in the riser. When you go to tighten it down, the thing doesn't move. It's like putting that rear plate that. The real solution here is to tell QAD to pull their panties out of their butt and let people use any mounting bracket rear they want, because that's the only reason that exists that way, because it's designed to be mounted on the back of a bow. But QAD owns a patent on the gap and the width, and they will not license that to Hamski. They'll license it to almost anybody else, but they won't license it to Hamski. Now, to me, that seems like they feel threatened. It's like when somebody will treat one person, particularly individual, different than everybody else. It's usually because they feel threatened by that individual, not any other reason, right? So that's just my 2 cents on it. They've licensed it to Ripcord. They licensed it to, I think they licensed it to a couple other companies that they're actually letting use that. I mean, they pay them a royalty to use it, but Hamski approached them and they wouldn't even offer them a royalty. They're like, nope, you can't use it. Somebody feels threatened.
Yeah, I mean, since I've known you, we've always been Hamski.
Yeah, and the Trinity's bomb-proof. It's just really big and heavy, and in order to still integrate things, on a Matthews for sure, on a Hoyt, yes, you have to have a rest that clears that to clear the quiver as low profile as you would want. One of the benefits of using those systems, those low-profile quivers, low-profile rests, it allows you to move everything in tight, so it doesn't feel so leany. And if you don't, you either lose number of arrows you can put in the quiver, or you have to move the quiver out. Moving the quiver out, now you've alleviated the whole point of what you're trying to do. Well, you got a rear mount rest, or you got to have a really low profile rest that mounts around the back.
In your hierarchy of rests you trust, Hamski's been your top. What's the next one that you trust? QAD?
Well, there's only a couple aero rest manufacturers anymore, it seems like, that are, notable. Let's think. So you've got Hamski, you got QAD, you got Ripcord, which I think they're almost no one uses anymore. Vapor Trail. Who else is even in existence?
Who manufactures Dudley's Rest?
Prophecy. That's AAE. AAE does the Prophecy, and they make Dudley's Rest.
Yeah,
it's theirs, and they have sealed bearings. So I guess if I had to look at it, I like limb driven rests.
Yeah.
So when you start saying I want a limb driven rest, then now it's like, okay, there's like 3 rests or 4. It's a small market. Kind of feels like it's a market that maybe more people should get into if there's
opportunity
because there's
for
sites
another, yeah.
everywhere, but there's only a couple of rest companies really.
Yeah.
But the AAE Prophecy on that platform is reliable. It does work, but it's a cock up rest. So now you're in the category of a QAD. And if it came down to a QAD or a Prophecy, if we're talking an IMX, well, but you can't get a QAD and a rear mount. You can't get a AAE and a rear mount system. They don't make one. So it's only a side plate. So, I mean, like QAD's got it locked up. Like they really do. They have what the government would refer to as a monopoly. I mean, they kind of own that. And so many people use them just because they created the way to mount it, and then they've gotten the bow manufacturers to get behind it.
Mm-hmm.
So much so that they pay a royalty on every bow that's got that cut in it, which they've all got that cut in it. They're all paying them. Like they could stop making arrow rests. They really could, as long as somebody made that arrow rest. And they're just going to make a shit ton of money on the fact that you got to pay to cut that. And what Hamskea was trying to do, hats off to them for going to bat against the largest dog in the industry, because QAD is the largest arrow rest manufacturer, period, and it ain't even close, right? Because they've got everybody's branded, everybody's licensed, so you can buy a QAD from every brand of bow, like that has the bow brand's name on it. That's how clever they've gotten with it. But Hamskea went to bat and said, okay, well, we'll just make a different dovetail, and we'll allow anybody to license it for free. Put this on the back of your bow, it's free. You don't have to pay them for that. And they're in a big lawsuit over it right now because it is different. And as far as like patents are concerned, it's more than 10% different, right? And they didn't set it up to where you have to machine the riser. They set it up to where it's drilled and tapped to bolt the plate on in the back. So, I mean, I would argue it's at least more than 10% different, but the bow manufacturers are scared since there's a patent, so they won't drill and tap the back of the riser for it. Or all this problem really goes away. I mean, if it's cut in it, it's clean, and that's a better way to do it. But they tried to create something to get around this monopoly that QAD kind of has. Because no offense to QAD, they've got some really innovative products that are not made in a very durable fashion. Most of them are imported out of China, and they're made very cheap, but they charge a lot for them. But once again, they're the most popular rest, and they work. They really do. It's just small parts, small components, little attachment things, small screws. I get worried over time it's not going to hold up to what a Western hunter does. If you're tree stand and ground blind hunting for whitetail deer in a reasonable environment, it's fine. But if you're strapping it to your back, rolling down a mountain, have it strapped to a four-wheeler, bouncing around the back of your truck, just going balls out all the time like a typical Western hunter does, it's going to be a little bit more difficult to rely on. So everything about it's smaller and daintier and a little more frail, in my opinion.
Interesting.
But if you took my options away, I'd probably have to pick a vapor trail because I'd rather have a limb driven rest than a cable driven rest. Cable driven rest is going to manipulate your wheel timing or your cable's timing, so you got to retune the bow to shoot one of those over a limb driven. And the next best limb driven, which I feel like I'm forgetting somebody, and I'm going to feel really bad about it. Comment down below on what I forgot. Arrow rests out there that are way better than these ones or something, because I'm sure I forgot something. But Vapor Trail would be your next choice because they're an authentic limb-driven rest. And when I think about it, I mean, Trophy Taker, but that all got imported and the quality went in the crapper. And I'm assuming they're still around, but I don't know. I used Trophy Taker forever until Hamskea, like 2 years into Hamskea or 3 years into Hamskea, and Trophy Taker just stopped making new product. But yeah, I mean, I think that's a part of the industry that could really use a competitor or two added into it, because there's not a lot different going on there. I mean, who's offering something that's authentically different, like really different? I ain't seen anything. Like Schaefer's got something that's unique, but it's been around for 10 years, and it's a rest that comes in and out from the sides. That's unique. That's different. Hey, way to come up with something different and try to change the industry a little bit. It didn't ever take very well, but it was a neat idea. I mean, you could literally push them together and put a pin in it There was like a spring pin, and it was like a whisker biscuit. Like you couldn't move it around. Like it wasn't like a QAD where the arrow can move around a little bit, or a ripcord where the arrow can move around a little bit. It was on your arrow. It was solid. And then when you drew it back, it engaged the last little bit, and the spring pin came out, and you fired it, and the two sides went like that. But it was still cable driven. Cool idea. Like it was a very unique idea. I had a couple customers that just really believed in those a lot, so I carried them for them. But I think it was Schaefer opposition rest, if I remember right. It was what they call it. I think it's still around. But that's a unique idea. But outside of that, I mean, it's kind of like the same old turd refinished a little bit.
I like it, man. That's a little call to action for the industry, huh?
Yeah, you got to think there can be something better. But when you got, everything designed to need a rest that mounts to the back of a riser and only one guy can really make it, it's kind of fucked. I mean, you're basically saying QAD or die. And if you want to go out against this, we've got a shit ton of money and we are going to sue the pants off you for trying. Even if you're in the legal right, we're still going to sue the crap out of you.
Yeah.
It's just how it's been because they kind of own it and they know they own it.
Yeah.
And what's funny is way back when that rest came out, the rear mount IMX QAD, Matthews was in negotiations with Trophy Taker, which was then owned by Dan Evans. And they loved the way the SmackDown Pro attached to the back of their riser. And they hadn't, the rear mount dovetail stuff hadn't quite started yet. Right? It existed, but it wasn't like mainstream. I'm trying to remember what bow that came out on first, but, and they were also talking to QAD because QAD had made a rest that was for them too. And they wanted to use the SmackDown Pro. They went, we like your rest. We think it tunes better. We think everything about it's better. And they couldn't come to an agreement on money because they wanted to buy we want to buy like 10,000 of these or 20,000 of these with our name on it and like a rubber dampener and stuff in there. And they never could come to some kind of an agreement on it. And they ended up going with QAD. And that decision, because Matthews is the largest manufacturer of bows in the United States, right? That one decision pretty much put QAD in the driver's seat.
Changed the market.
It did. That could have very easily been Trophy Taker instead of QAD.
Wow.
That eventually took over as the largest manufacturer of arrow rests in the industry. And the fact that it was integrated to a Matthews bow would probably be the number one reason. Not to say that could have happened for sure or whatnot, but I mean, I look back on that and just kind of beat my head against the wall. I was like, he ended up selling that company and just running off with his own little accessories and whatnot. Yeah. And I don't think it was like what's the word? A king's ransom by any means for it, So I'm willing to bet if you asked him if he could take that one back, he probably would. But because it was a better functioning rest, hands down.
Yeah, I've heard old stories about that SmackDown being solid.
Yeah, it was a very good rest. It's just one of those things where it got bought by a conglomerate. They own like 5 or 6, 7 different companies.
Yeah,
and
attention to detail went away.
Never really innovated. He had came out with a
changed the manufacturing too, right?
Oh yeah, it went from. Well, I think I'm trying to remember if towards the end if he ever went to China with it or not. I think he had already, but once they took it over, it really went to China. Like every last little thing, I want to say was, I don't know if they just get like an assembled package done back and it's ready to sell, but I think they ended up trying to bring some stuff back in. I don't even know where that company is now. It was a very significant player for me. Like it was my number one selling rest and it wasn't even close. Like we sold a crap ton of those over anything else, and over like a period of 3 years, once Dan sold it and the other guys took it over, I think we still maintained for about another 2 years. And then, yeah, it's Hamsky. They just make a better product. And, we made better money on the other ones. But at the end of the day, it's not about money for me. It's what's the best product? What really functions the best? As long as you're allowing a dealer to sell it, like who makes the best product, and we'll just let the market decide it from there. But yeah, there's just, that seems like there's not so many. When you look at how many site manufacturers there are, it doesn't equate to how many rest manufacturers there are. And the funny part is the site is so much harder to make. Like when you look at what's involved,
all
how many different intricate little pieces and parts and whatnot that go together to make this thing function, yet there's way more players in the game. You look at rests and I bet you there's less than 10. And rests are simple. Like there's nothing that complicated to it. But Yeah, who knows? Just my 2 cents, I guess.
On that note, you see our fire?
Oh, yeah, it's been out.
Our fire's out.
It kind of rattled on there.
We're still kind of stewing on what 3D events we may or may not attend this year. So if you guys got ideas, yeah, give us a little comment. Drop us a little comment on what 3D events we may or may not show up to. You never know. We might just roll into one unannounced, huh?
Surprise, surprise. Yeah.
They're fun, man.
Yeah,
and if you haven't shot a 3D event this year, get out and do one, dude. Like, get out and shoot one for sure. It will make you more ready for your hunting season, and you'll have a ton of fun shooting with your friends.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Put it on the calendar.
Mark it down.
And subscribe.
Thumbs
subscribe. Fire's out.
Out.